3, 2, 1.
Hello everyone and welcome to the Greater Manchester Police Fire and Crime Panel. As people will tell, we are still doing this virtually as we're still in the pandemic situation. So I'd like to thank everyone for attending via this Teams meeting. It isn't ideal, but we're doing the best we can in the circumstances. And I'd like to thank all the officers for pulling this together. First of all, we've got apologies. I've had apologies registered from Caroline Wilkins. As members may know already, she's doing a lot on the NHS side of the pandemic, so we can understand why her apologies have been sent. Are there any further apologies, Steve?
I've received no other apologies, Chair.
And then we've got Councillor Mike Freeman here representing Trafford in place of Councillor Graham Whittam, is it? Anyway, in place of Graham. So welcome, Mike. Okay, we'll move on then. So we've got the, as I say, people want to speak, if they can kind of show the virtual hand or wave at me, I will do my best to make sure we get everybody. Any declarations of interest for the meeting? And while I'm asking for those, there has been a form sent round by Steve to make sure we've got a register of interest up to date for the year, so we can remind members to get those filled in if we haven't done that already. That would be great. Okay, I'm getting no signs of that. We've got the minutes of the meeting held, again virtually, on the 29th of September. Are people happy they are a correct record? I'm getting nods. And I do love this bit. The silence is golden. So we're taking silence as if it's acceptance. So that's always a lot easier. So brilliant. We'll take that as the correct record. And if there's any items we want to bring up, we can bring it up at the end if we've not covered it during normal business. I'm more than happy on that. Okay, item 5 is one of our standard items we've had for the last few months is the Iops update, and I'm pleased to be joined by ACC Chris Sykes. So Chris, I'm going to hand straight over to you. I know we've had a report through, but I'm happy for you to go through the highlights of that. Thanks.
Thank you, Chair. Can I just make sure I'm coming through loud and clear?
Yep.
Thumbs up, that's good. So thank you, panel. I've just submitted a very short report this afternoon regarding the progress on Iops. I am pleased to say I haven't a lot to tell you, which I think is good news. As you know, with Iops, we still have a development program under a program of work called Iops Futures, and it's concentrating on its next version of PoliceWorks, which, as a reminder, is our records management system. We hope to get this ready for launch before Christmas this winter. There could be some operational reasons why we don't do that. For example, COVID or a lockdown and having to have the suppliers available to do it might restrict us. But this is about a software improvement which significantly changes the way that officers search the system using something called SoundX. Following that, we have a version 2.8 ready to go a couple of months after 2.7. This brings some further enhancements, and we have a full program of work in place for next year to develop that records management system. There's nothing to report on performance. The product is performing as you would expect for a police records management system. It's stable, performs well, and again, we've been under absolutely enormous pressure and demands during the summer with COVID, and it stood up well. We still have, like we had with any system, work on that we do with the servers, virus checkers, security patches, all the things that you would expect a police force to have to put in place. We're always conscious of cyber attack, and we have to do work to spec up the servers, which is something we've been doing recently. We've been doing some security patching over the last 2 weeks on the system, but I'm comfortable with the performance currently. We have a lot of work ongoing, which is about improving the effectiveness of our frontline staff in the service they give to the public by improving the mobile phone function that our officers have. I think in the past I've briefed on the fact that we have something called Optic, which is on Samsung phones that our officers have in their pocket. And we're working with our developers to make that app even more user-friendly, to allow them to do things like speech-to-voice recognition, and for them to be able to automatically, for those victims of crime that have the facility, to send them details by email and text, and to give them instant crime numbers, and also to be able to get a lot of information about the address we might have in the officer's hand. There's a lot of great software there already, but we want to improve the user experience. And we're also under Iops Dashboard. That is the system that pulls together all the useful information across Greater Manchester Police around our demands. It's showing for them, I can look at it now, I can see how many high risk missings we have. I can see that we've got 800 jobs in our open incident queue waiting for police officers to service those calls from the public. I can see that we have 31,000 open crime. That is a brilliant system, but needs further enhancement. And we have a new user interface that we hope to plug in again in December before Christmas. And the fourth item on the report just talks about, at the moment, Greater Manchester Police does almost like a manual bulk load of its data onto the Police National Database. And we started doing that in May. We've been updating it, but we have just passed a gateway that allow us to move, hopefully very soon, to a system of regular daily updates onto the Police National Database, so that the Police National Database has automatic live information from GMP rather than it being a few days or a week old. And that's just part of ongoing programme of work to give us that connectivity. Chair, that's all that's in the report this afternoon, because nothing significant really to report. I think the next things that will be really significant for the panel will be once the upgrade has taken place, and once we've launched the new Iops Dashboard and the sort of efficiencies that we'll get from doing that. That's the next sort of key milestones for us that we're looking to deliver.
Thanks for that, Chris. Certainly a helpful update, and it's positive that it's a brief written update, because it means things are moving in the right direction. Got a couple of members that are indicating. I'll take Councillor Bray and then Councillor Pearce. Warren, you're on mute at the moment, but it won't be the last time I say that today, I'm sure.
Yeah, it's just a question on the dashboard. I missed it. Did you say you were hoping to launch that before Christmas?
Sorry, Councillor, the dashboard is currently up and running, and it has been running since we launched Iops last summer. What I hope to launch before Christmas is an upgrade to the dashboard, a new user interface, and it provides more data for our frontline supervisors. The dashboard is mainly used by sergeants, inspectors, chief inspectors, superintendents to sort of manage demand and see where the demand is in the system. It identifies things like high risk missing from homes to make sure that we know about them and we're wrapping around appropriate structure to them. So it's a really useful tool.
Right, okay. I meant the upgrade, Ian. So
yeah.
that should be in before Christmas. Very good.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm hoping for a report on it this Friday, which gives me further information on it.
Okay, brilliant. Thanks for that. Councillor Pearce.
Thank you, Chair. I seem to have lost my raise hand function on the little bar. Previously, since Iops came into being, we've had difficulty accessing data to inform our future planning in local authorities. Is that situation resolved now so that we can get the data we need, crime statistics and stuff like that, to enable future planning?
Yes, you should be getting that locally through your community safety partnership. I think it was at the last panel or steering group we updated, and there was a paper about how we do have now a facility for non-GMP employees to access some of the data through a vetting procedure, and there was a paper presented on that. And we also have some great performance tools that are available locally. I think sometimes as well, Council, there's a bit of an issue, not just on the technology, but capacity of individuals to be able to provide the data, unfortunately. We are still not exposing all the possible data that we have to the annual data return, which is what we send through to the Home Office. We are still doing that in batches. I think we reported a couple of months ago, we did a first round of annual data returns, ADRs, and we have another group that are in the process of getting made. But, you know, we have an awful lot of data in GMP. Sometimes it's our capacity to be able to get it out to the CSPs and locally.
Yeah, I think that's we did touch on it. Certainly, one of the last ones. It's working out if there's some joint work that would be useful across some standard reports that would be useful across all of the boroughs, which will make it easy for GMP and make it easier for the districts as well. So I think that's something that I think we'll have a look at how that's developing, which would be quite helpful. I've got Councillor Anderson and then Councillor Freeman.
Oh, thank you, Chair. Just in terms of data, certainly we've had an issue over in the Wigan district in the last few days where we're trying to obtain relevant data for the renewal of some cumulative impact zones in Leigh and Wigan town centres, and we've not been able to access the information we need from Iops, and that's despite going as high as the, I think, superintendent on there. and it's led to quite a lot of negativity in terms of the council and also some local police as well, in terms of frustration not being able to release accurate data to help us with those renewal submissions. So there is there's still issues there, and I mean, obviously at this level I want to appeal that to the Deputy Mayor and Chief Officer to try and resolve this issue as soon as possible.
Councillor, can I ask that you please send me that direct? Because if this is about, say, crime figures or antisocial behaviours in a particular area, which I think is what you're indicating, I'd be surprised if we can't give you that. And I wonder whether it's a capacity issue or a skills issue rather than it not being available.
I don't think it's a capacity issue, because it's been escalated up to the superintendent level of the Wigan division, who said they would like to provide us with information, but they were unable to. So obviously it is, I mean, that's been raised again this morning with them. So, there's severe disappointment from the leader of the council at Wigan, David Molyneux, and also senior officers within the Wigan Officer Corps, that, we have endangered the renewal of these impact zones if the required information isn't supplied.
Council, let me speak to Superintendent Chris Bridge, who's the Wigan Superintendent, and I can get to the bottom of what's going on there.
Right, okay, but it's obviously been going around the circles for a few days
Sounds
now.
like it's been going around in circles, yeah.
All right.
No, that sounds helpful, and thanks, Chris, for being able to pick that up. Going to move to Councillor Freeman, and then they've got our independent member Majid. Councillor Freeman.
Thank you, Chair. ACC Sites, thanks for the update, it is very succinct and to the point. We did ask at the last meeting regarding remote access by community safety teams on the rollout of laptops to community safety teams, and I think the minutes did say that we'd be presented with a programme from yourself at this meeting to determine the rollout of laptops to community safety teams for remote access. I wonder if there's any update on that. Thank you.
Councillor, do you mean us providing laptops to our beat officers and PCSOs, or to like local authority staff?
This is local authority staff, remote access. At the moment, our staff have to go into the police station next door to access, and our understanding is that there is a programme of remote access, i.e. laptops will be released to community safety teams. And that was my understanding at the last meeting when we had the update from you. Jeanette, you're going to say something now, aren't you?
Yeah, I took this action away from the last panel meeting. I had some conversations with Greater Manchester Police, and I've been collating names of officers and what their current profile looks like. There is a commitment from GMP to do that rollout of Windows 10 laptops to those officers. I'm not sure if I've had a response from Trafford, but I'll check back. If you want to just check with Helen, she needs to just send me over the details and I can send it into GMP.
Thanks for that. I think that's helpful, and if we can update a future meeting on this one as to where that's up to, but hopefully we can be rectified in the interim, if that's okay, Chris. Majid.
Okay, thanks, Chair, and thanks, Chris, for the update. Couple of quick questions. So we spoke a lot about the improvements for officers and colleagues working within the system. From a public perspective, is there any sort of work being undertaken to improve customer service or keeping customers up to date? People who reported a crime, they get automatically notified of any progress, updates, etc. So that's the first question from a public perspective. And secondly, there's lots of talk about place-based leadership, system leadership, etc. Going forward in terms of data sharing, obviously appropriate data sharing, is there talks with the likes of the NHS and others about how we can potentially share data, appropriate data, that is, to improve the way we deliver services to communities? Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Majid. Your first question around customer service and giving victims sort of early updates, etc., it's really, really important. We have something called VCOP, which is where we, have to comply with certain guidelines about how often we update people and keep them updated. We actually have a whole massive investment in something, obviously the Deputy Mayor will be very well aware of, which is called Programme 1 of our big piece of change in GMP, which is investment into all our call handling and customer contact system, involving the operational communications branch, digitising, bringing in things like you know, when you ring up GMP, a better way of selecting the service that you need so that we can deal with you more efficiently and effectively, through to the digital single online home where you can go on and report crimes and other matters on GMP's website and get automatic updates. And the mobile is connected to that, which would now allow us to give you know, victims of crime texts and emails with crime numbers on, and the ability with them in the future to be able to contact us and ask for written updates. So imagine it's all in a big program of work that fits into something called Programme 1, and all around customer contact and victim service. It was quite a big investment, basically authorised by the Deputy Mayor to drive GMP in that direction. With regards to generally what some people, it's the whole Greater Manchester. You know, it's the Greater Manchester authorities and the police, local authorities, you know, and NHS tying all their data together. Yes, one of the reasons why we did a big transformation in GMP, our old data was in such a state that we would never have been able to share it with anybody. I've previously briefed on big part of the investment is to get our data in something that's called a POL database, which now meets national standards. POL stands for person, object, location, and event, and all our data is matched against that. That enables it now to be much better shared with other organisations, and we do have the vision of being able to, through the technologies that we've got, to be able to share electronically with the likes of the NHS and vice versa, and with local authorities, etc. Now that is something, there is actually a piece of work led by the Combined Authority that leads on some of that, and part of that is also about the victim journey, and there has been conversations around a victims portal there that the Combined Authority have been exploring for Greater Manchester citizens, which would link some of this together. So it's really exciting stuff, and we're just a small part of that work.
Thanks for that, Chris. That sounds really quite exciting for the future, which is also part of the reason we were doing the move on Iops, to actually make sure we could get the full benefits of the systems that are available. So that's quite helpful. I think we've got the final question is Councillor Muslim from Bolton. Nadeem.
Thank you, Chair. I was just wondering, really, what is the current sort of view of officers on the front line that are actually using Iops? Have you spoken to them recently? Have they been surveyed recently at all about how things are really operating and how the rollout's going? Because when I still speak to officers in my locality, they do still speak of their frustration with the system and how it sort of slows them, and they're not being as effective at their jobs because of it. So just wondering if that's a view that's held across GM with other officers, or is it just perhaps just in Bolton that we're seeing that? And secondly, as well, with the report, which obviously I do appreciate you bringing to us, part of that you mentioned about performance, and you've got a plan for sort of phased rollout of more enhancements over the next 18 months. I'm just curious as to how those enhancements were identified. Were they something that yourselves or the developer felt was appropriate, or had they come from genuine concerns of officers on the front line? And also, would we be able to understand in a bit more detail, I appreciate you might not have that now, but at some point what those enhancements actually will be, so we can obviously just be kept in the loop?
Okay, thank you, Councillor Muslim. Just to answer your first question, well, we have a measure where we have all our leads in each local, in each district, that give us a confidence score of where their staff are with the system. And that's at the highest level it's ever been at the moment. So we know that people have settled down to the change and are much more confident using the system. We do get lots of feedback about it. What we actually find is most of our, as you know, we're recruiting massively, and the numbers of police officers is increasing significantly. In my own portfolio, we've had an investment of 244 extra police officers this year. And these are all student officers come in, and the student officers, most of them are much younger than me, seem to be able to grasp the technology much quicker than people who have been used to the old system. I'm trying to say that carefully. That's not to say that, there are some parts of the system that staff really like and some parts of the system that staff don't like. And that really then fits into the second part of your question, is the best people to give us the feedback on the system are those hard-working frontline officers, staff, PCSOs that work on it. We've done an awful lot of consultation with them about what they want to improve, and then link that to how we want to improve our services to our communities. So please be reassured, I'm getting loads of feedback. I get, officers speak to me directly about what they like and what they don't like. When you get to things like improvements, it's really difficult when you've got so many improvements you're trying to roll out. But I'll give you an example. In version 2.7, which is the one that we're going to release next, there's a very small improvement to it that when a custody sergeant is going through the risk assessment for people in custody, they're asking a question in 2.7 now about whether someone has served in the armed forces, whether they're a military veteran. And we know they experience real difficulties in life. Now, if that is a yes, and they now tick that box, the system automatically puts a automatic digital referral through to a service that can contact that individual and provide them with support. I mean, that's just one of hundreds of different things that we can build into the system as we go along. And IOPS has the ability to do those changes, more frequently than we could do with the old one. Now, that's a small change. A huge one would be changing the way you actually search across the system, or changing a domestic abuse risk assessment form. But again, when we had the outbreak of COVID in March, we were able to quickly change IOPS to put a new marker in place. As you'll know, we're issuing fixed penalty notices for people who break offences with COVID, and that's something that we were able to put straight onto our mobile phone, and they're all done now digitally. So because we've now got this platform, we're able to be more responsive to changing nature. We have a whole program of improvements and things for next year, which of course I could brief you on, with lots of little things like those examples I've just given you.
Thanks for that, Chris. And as I say, I think, well, as someone that's bearing the scars currently from doing a migration from Google over to Microsoft in Manchester, and this is a lot smaller scheme compared to what's been gone through with GMP, I think we know that the pressure's there when change takes place, and I think we are in a so much better place than we have been for a long time on the IOPS updates we've been receiving here. And I think that goes to the hard work and dedication by yourself, but also for the officers out on the ground and the staff out on the ground who are making it work and making sure they're now adopting it and knowing and getting the positives from it. So I think that's really, really helpful. I think this update does show that we are in the right direction. I think it's the benefits are starting to become apparent. There's some fine bits there we'd like to see for the improvement to our CSPs, which we know are in progress. And I think if we can keep the update here without being a burden, I think it actually highlights the good work that's actually been taking place. So no, thank you for that, Chris.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
And you are more than welcome to stay with us. But I know you've got a busy one there. So thank you very much. We're going to move on then to item 6 on the agenda, which is probably one of the it's the statutory duties that the Police Crime and Fire Panel have, which is setting the precept, which is the money that goes from the council tax to the service, and it's one of the most important jobs we do, as well as keeping everything else, but it's one of the statutory jobs we have, and we've got the process that being set out. I think Steve's going to run through the process for us. Is that right? Yeah.
Yes, thank you, Chair. So the paper is a reminder of the duties of the panel in relation to setting the precept. So we will need to approve a precept through the panel for eventual issuing on the 1st of March. So it sets out that process and also just highlights the timeline for that and asks a question around the meeting timelines in January. So just a quick reminder then of the process. So there is a potentially a 2-stage process, which depends on whether the panel vetoes an initial proposal. But as the paper sets out through the flowchart on page 15, there's a requirement for the PCC to notify the panel of a proposed precept by the 1st of February. The panel then reports back by the 8th of February, and the key point at that point is whether there is a veto being used or not. If not, then that allows us to get on and publish both the report, the response to the report, and the final proposed precept. In that case, well in advance of the deadline of the 1st of March. However, if you as the panel feel you're not happy with the proposed precept, then you would respond to the Mayor setting out the views of the panel, and then the PCC would be required to produce a revised precept, which he would have to do by the 15th of February, and that does need to be a different figure. So if the panel feel the precept is too high, then the precept would have to be reduced in that report presented on the 15th of February. Equally, if the panel felt the precept was too low, then the precept would need to be increased for that proposal that came back in the 15th of February. There is no set amount by which the precept has to be increased or reduced. It just has to be changed in that direction. The panel yourselves would then make a second report based on the revised precept, at which point the PCC will then publish the response to that and issue a final precept figure, and that precept figure can be the revised one even if the panel rejects that revised one, or it can be a different one, effectively a third version of the proposed precept. So that's the process. Just a couple of things just to say around the information that builds up to that, because that's obviously the end of a process, and the process really is starting now, and it's starting with conversations between myself and my opposite number, Lynn Potts, at the GMP side, to start talking about the financial position in year, to understand what the issues are that will provide part of that underlying medium-term financial plan that we'll take a view on going into 2021-22. We'll then have conversations with both the Deputy Mayor and the Mayor around those figures, and that will take us towards January when we start to pull those figures together to ultimately present to the PCP. The other key factor in that, though, is what we get from central government. So the paper makes reference to the CSR, so we would have expected, when we were talking about this last year, we were expecting to be presenting on a multi-year settlement, and a settlement that we had a decent amount of advanced understanding of by the time we got to setting the budgets, and that now won't be the case with both the multi-year spending review being put back and the budget being put back. So next week we get the 1 year statement spending review, and that will give us an indication of the Home Office settlement, and then we'll work closely with with Home Office and other PCCs across the country to understand what that's likely to mean in terms of a final settlement for Greater Manchester, that we can set alongside the work we've been doing with the police to understand what pressures they're facing and what issues are presenting risks or opportunities on the police side. So that all builds into a process that we bring back for final sign-off. At the moment, we've got a PCC on the 26th of January, so the hope would be that that's the opportunity to sign off the final settlement a little bit earlier than the absolute deadline. What the paper's proposing is that we have a meeting in the middle of January, slightly earlier, to look at a draft proposal of that. Now that is slightly dependent on making sure we've got enough out of government at that stage, and those dates do build in a little bit of leeway if we are up against the wire in terms of that. But at the moment, what we're asking from the panel today is just to make sure people are comfortable with, providing we get sufficient information from the Home Office to go ahead with looking to put a date in for the middle of January where we can run through the draft proposals, with then an attempt to finalise them on the 26th of January. Notwithstanding, if you as a panel on the 26th of January veto that proposal, we will then need to bring something back to a subsequent meeting, and there is time to do that within the set timeline. So happy to take any questions and also get views around the proposals for, in principle, working on setting up a meeting to go through the draft proposals in the middle of January.
Thanks for that, Steve. That's really helpful. And let's say it's one of those ones that comes around each year, and it's always useful to have a reminder of what the process is, because it is very important to the residents of Greater Manchester. I'll open it up to members. Can I just ask, have we had an indication of what level the precept could go up to this year? Because there's been different amounts over the last few years. So is that one of the things we're waiting to hear from central government? It's one of the things we're waiting to hear from central.
Absolutely. So that's one of the key ones. As you recall, it was £10 maximum last year, but it was a higher figure than that the previous year. So we don't know that at the moment.
Yeah, I think over the last 3 years we've had different figures at different times for going through, and that makes a huge difference, and also shows how difficult it is to actually set a budget, to set policing priorities when we're not sure what the boundaries are. I think it makes it a very difficult process, and all thanks goes out to the people that are actually trying to do that. Anyway, I'll open it up regarding the timescales and the suggestion of a meeting in mid-January to have a provisional budget. Councillor Bray.
Yeah, just on what you were talking about then, will we have that information for the meeting you're proposing in mid-January to look at the draft proposals?
Yes, that would be our intention, and that's why if we don't have that information, we wouldn't in the end go ahead with that meeting. We'd just have to slip things back further, but that's a critical piece of information that we'd need to even have a look at the draft proposals.
Okay.
Any further comments on that? So I think we're getting a general acceptance that we'd like to study. We want to have the draft as early as possible, which we've been realistic is going to be mid-January, and we will facilitate a meeting and we'll ask the officers to come together with a date which is suitable for majority of members, and then from that we can then get the firm proposals on the 26th of January, and then we can make the decision if we're going to approve or veto those decisions for them moving forward and the decisions that we made following that. I think that's quite useful, to have the clear process, and just hopefully at least we can be clear if it's not clear from central government what the parameters are yet. So we will work with that one, and hopefully there won't be a general election in the way, which delayed things even more last year. But anyway, let's not start that rumour going. No, I think we're all happy on that one. Everyone else? Yep, we're getting nods all around. Thank you very much for that one. Okay, moving on then to item 7, and hopefully this follows a motion that went to Oldham Council, and I think it would be appropriate, if possible, for Councillor Williams to say something on this to start off with.
I mean,
we can see, and Steve,
nice to see you guys. Really nice to see you guys. Took me ages to connect up, but I've done it now.
Just say before you start, for people that don't know, Steve hasn't been very well with COVID, so it's really good for us all to see Steve back looking so well. And he looks remarkably well. And I think the experience he's gone through, certainly some of the communication I've had, has not been good at all. And so it's really, really positive to see you back here, Steve. And it'd be this motion, and check everything is going well with you.
Just before I mention about the motion, mentally I'm sound. My mood's good, appetite's good, but physically, oh my God. Oh God, it's terrible physically. Just going to Tesco with Bev and walking out on Saturday, I felt like I was going to collapse. It's just so fatigued, unbelievable, but mentally I'm okay. Anyway, the motion. I think if everybody's ready, it just simply turns around and asks for Greater Manchester Police in particular to provide more of a response regarding road traffic, not so much road traffic accidents, but behaviour on the road. And Mike Freeman and David, who were 2 ex-bobbies from the police, may have a comment about this. I don't want anybody else to split this up or not. In the pandemic, you've seen some of the absolute best in people, and on the other hand, you've seen some of the worst. And when it comes to driving, I don't drive. Bev, my partner, drives, but I don't drive. I would never want to drive near me. The way you see people driving these days, you're thinking, oh my goodness, it's relentless, the pressure they put on other drivers, and you're thinking, at one time in Greater Manchester Police used to have its own road traffic policing unit that was dedicated, and because of the cuts and because of austerity, it's gone by and by. And I think the motion from the council is simply asking this: would it be possible to have the road traffic unit in Greater Manchester reinstated as it was previously to the same level, even though it might not be seen as priority compared to lots of other things the police do? Road traffic policing and the way that people behave on the roads, in some instances, Nigel, really does need sorting out, and I think that motion is just asking for a bit more attention in that area. Thank you.
Thanks for that, Steve, and yeah, it's welcome to hear your enthusiasm back. I'm glad that's not waned during it. We've got a couple of people on the comments, and I'll go for Councillor Nadeem, Councillor Muslim first, and then Councillor Emmersley. But before I start with those, Bev would like to come in to start off with, so I'll let her. Oh no, Bev, and then I'll hear members
come in at the end if you like, Councillor Murphy. I just was indicating because the hand thing doesn't work. So I was just indicating I'll come in at some point, whenever you think.
I will count. I will get Baroness Hughes in at the end. We'll take some contributions, then we can get summing up there. Brilliant. Nadine.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I was just saying, to be honest, I sort of agree with the motion. I think, you know, more support, I think, in this area would be great to see. And, you know, I think it'd be worthwhile as well, you know, an agenda item coming to a future meeting specifically on road traffic, so we can actually discuss it in a perhaps a bit more depth than we will do today. To be honest, when I hear from residents in my ward, but also from other councillors in Bolton, the number one issue with regarding policing isn't really about drugs or attacks or anything like burglaries. It's about speeding is the big thing that keeps coming back to me. And so I think it'd be useful for us to actually discuss that in more detail. I mean, over the past week as well, unfortunately, we had quite a serious hit and run in Bolton, which resulted in the death of one of our former mayoresses, Gay Wharton, which is an absolute tragedy. And I think, you know, these accidents are becoming more and more frequent at the moment, and I think, yeah, more investment is absolutely needed. But I would love to hear directly from, you know, obviously we'll hear from Bev today, but also from GMP about their priorities at the moment and actually what they're doing to tackle road safety. I mean, when I read one of the emails I got from a resident, they talk about how they hear nothing from the police on speeding, no extra patrols, no speed traps, no effective traffic control measures, no speed cameras. The usual, I won't say the word, but about budgets, cuts and resources and stuff, and they go on. But I think there's a real perception out there with the public at the moment, and I think it's a fair assessment that the police just don't have a handle on tackling road safety in Greater Manchester at the moment. So I tried to raise that myself from the view from Bolton, and hopefully, as I say, in the future we'll get another agenda item where we can actually get a representative from GMP to discuss this, perhaps in a bit more detail with us. Thank you.
Thanks for that. And I think the view across the whole of the conurbation has been there's been an increase in speeding vehicles. Cars can get up to great speeds in a very short time. And I think the ways that some of it is being addressed and some of it has been done with some of the previous work we've done with the precept, which we were talking about. And I'll let Bev come in and comment on that rather than me taking the thunder, would be useful. I'm going to take members' comments and then go to Baroness Hughes. So I've got Mike Freeman and then I've got Warren Bray. So Mike.
Thank you, Chair. I'm just really disappointed to hear members of this panel saying that almost Greater Manchester Police don't care or haven't got a handle on road traffic. You know, there's so much more that you as local authorities and your community safety teams can actually do. And I'll give you two examples. But for COVID, by now in Trafford, we'd have community action groups, groups of trained local people actually trained to use cameras to detect for intelligence purposes speeding on their local roads, because that is an issue. I don't doubt that's an issue. But the other thing is, I've spoken to our local police in Trafford, and yes, they're quite fully aware of the issue of speed in vehicles, and it is a big issue for communities. Therefore, we have spent £5,000 of the 50k we got from the Deputy Mayor of additional funding for community safety. We have purchased a speed camera for enforcement purposes for use by Trafford Police right across our borough for enforcement purposes. And in return, they have trained 5 or 6 PCSOs to use that camera to actually use it for enforcement purposes. Now, I would say to you that is really good use of PCSO's time. They're out in the community and they're actually enforcing speeding, because they can actually use this camera to catch motorists that are speeding. So I think there's more that we can do with our community safety teams. I think there's more we can do locally, and I would say to you, go back to your borough and get your community safety team to buy your local police a speed enforcement camera that they can then train their PCSOs to use. We're doing it in Trafford, we can do it elsewhere, but I really am disappointed to hear members say they don't think Greater Manchester Police have got a handle on road traffic issues. If you cut the budget by £200 million, like has been done since 2012, you don't come back from that and we'd be well to remember that, and we need to be supporting our police, not criticising them. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you for that, Councillor Freeman. I think you make some very valid points there, and I think there's been some very hard decisions on budgets, and the police are doing a tremendous job trying to deliver for the communities. I did forget to call Councillor Emsley, so I'll do Janet and then go to Warren and then to David. Sorry, Janet.
It's okay, I won't hold it against you. So in fact, Mike's gone before me, but he's mentioned something that I was going to mention. We've done exactly the same as you've done, Mike, and we've got the speed camera happening. So on Friday, ironically Friday the 13th, Pennine police officers were out. They caught 65 cars, 15 seatbelt offences, 6 mobile phone offences, 3 insurance, 1 licence, 1 drugs. So a useful stint on Friday. However, on the social media, you're getting comments from the public saying, "Why aren't you out catching criminals?" So the point is that these are criminals. They're just a different type of criminal. You also obviously get people asking you in various forums to do something about road safety, and then when you do, they start to comment on why aren't you doing something else. So you're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't. We know that. Some of what we're seeing might be down to budget cuts, and some of it might be down to changes in behaviour due to the situation because the roads are clear. But what we need to see is a behaviour change, and I think if we're going to do that in any way, shape or form, it has to be a unified approach from all of us, so that we are getting the message across to people. People are getting hurt in this situation, and I would appreciate if we can get it together without too much fuss. How do the Greater Manchester Authority compare on road traffic accidents, etc., and fatalities? Because it's not something that I always get to see until we have a road safety meeting. But I'd appreciate that being got together. The other thing is that when we're doing the stuff like they did on Friday in Rochdale, it's during the day often, and one of the real bugbears with my residents is the nighttime boy racers, and I use that phrase in inverted commas, if you like. Some of them may well be female, but it's the nighttime, say 7 o'clock till 10-ish, that is really bugging people. So just a comment on that. Thank you.
Thanks for that, Janet. I've got Warren, then David, and then I'll bring that in. Thank you, Warren.
No, Chair, I didn't.
I thought you'd commented. I do.
No, my sound went off completely, and I was trying to get it back on again.
Brilliant. As long as we've got you. Brilliant. I will go then to Councillor David Jones from Bury. David.
Thank you, Chair. Just very quickly, I think we have to really be careful, as Mike has said from Trafford, about this perception or this apparent unease with GMP's ability or awareness of road traffic issues. To go back 10 years, you know, most divisions had their own accident investigation department. We were going into schools, we were showing children how to cross the road. The list was endless, but they were the halcyon days when we had, you know, a force of 10,000 officers. And we will never get back to that. And we really have to remember that as a starting point. Now, that doesn't mean for 1 minute that we must forget road safety issues. But equally, I would never, ever want the reputation that, well, dare I say, North Wales had for many years. For kind of, it was almost seen as picking on motorists who were travelling to the, you know, to rural parts of the countryside. So there is a balance. I think GMP are probably about there. I've no doubt there is more to be done, but I would hate to see an emphasis put on police officers challenging motorists while crime is still something to be addressed, because Chris Sykes would get a very stiff response from us in here if he wasn't dealing with crime but was dealing with speeding cars on the A62. Sorry, Steve, and I know it's a problem locally, it's a problem for me here, but I think we have to accept that there are limits as to what GMP can do. thanks, Jack. This is one of our pet subjects. We could talk about it all afternoon, I suspect. Thank you.
Thanks for that, David. Bev.
Thank you. Just checking my mic's on. Yes, it is. Well, I'd like to thank all those councillors for contributing to that, because I think this is a really important subject. I'm not sure, Councillor Williams, that we can or should seek to deal with this issue by going back to how we dealt with it before, because I think the rest of the world has moved on. And as a number of colleagues have said, the approach that we try and adopt now across Greater Manchester is one of partnership between the police, the local authority, Transport for Greater Manchester, the fire service has a role in terms of road safety as well. So it's a partnership approach. Having said that, I think it's a really important issue. The number of fatalities over recent years has increased, and the number of serious injuries has increased. And I've actually asked TFGM to do some work in trying to understand those figures more, because I'd like to know whether certain communities are affected more than others, or certain demographics, children are affected more than others. It is an issue of importance nonetheless to the police. ACC Nick Bailey is actually leading through the Safer Roads Partnership the development of a new strategy, and I'm sure a little bit further down the line, and I've been talking to him, he'd welcome the opportunity to come and talk to panel members about his approach to that and what we would hope to do. In addition to that new strategy, the action plan, we've also got the Cycling and Walking Commissioner, who's building into his approach issues of safety into the road network. I fund an initiative every year, these Safe Drive Stay Alive, focused on young drivers, that's actually been very effective. I also fund Break, which is a national charity helping the families of people who've been injured in road accidents. And actually through the Association of Police and Crime Commissioners, there's one crime commissioner who leads on this, Alison Fernandez, and we're working very closely with her, actually trying to get the government to come forward with a national road safety strategy, because if we can get a national strategy with some funding behind it, we'd be able to do even more. But I do very much welcome the comments of Councillor Freeman, Councillor Emlyn and Councillor Jones too, because what they have done is illustrated the way in which local initiatives can be just as powerful as GM-wide initiatives through JMP. But it really is about working together and trying to get the most out of the resources that we do have to make as big an impact on this as possible, because there's no doubt about it. Every family that's bereaved through what in many cases is an avoidable road accident, any family who's beset by serious injury through that is a tragedy, and we do need to bring those figures down, because they shouldn't be increasing. I think you're right, the pandemic, in those first few weeks, we saw the roads cleared, and we also saw cars racing, and that brought a renewed focus, which the police did actually respond to during that period of lockdown through the COVID Emergency Committee. We had a big initiative through the police on tackling those people who are careering through our streets. But that work continues. So, you know, I welcome the focus of the panel on this, actually, Chair. And if we want to table it for a meeting further down the line when ACC Bailey could come along, I'm sure he'd welcome that.
Thanks for that. I think that might be something useful, because as has been commented here, it's affecting most communities, and actually some of the response is there, and sometimes the community have got response as well that needs to put together, and we're seeing a lot of work going on that level. I've got 3 people going to speak, and then I do want to wrap this item up. So I've got Nadeem, then I've got Kevin, and I'll let Stephen have the final word on this one. Nadeem.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to come in really and just clarify. Really, I mean, I don't appreciate the assertion from some members that I don't support our police because I'm raising this issue. I absolutely do support our police, but I think I have a duty on behalf of the residents of Bolton who have raised these concerns with me to raise them in this forum especially when, you know, our part of our responsibility in this panel is not only to scrutinise Bev, but also GMP as well, and make sure that we are raising their concerns at the appropriate levels. I would also just add as well, it's great to hear some of the initiatives that have worked well in your localities that you've done through your council and stuff like that, which is great. I'll certainly take some of those ideas back. I mean, we are looking at our own as well in Bolton, although I would just raise that one of our speed watch initiatives is actually currently being held up by GMP for not getting back to us on the proposal that we've submitted to them. So we are looking at our, you know, doing things through the community safety partnership as well. I just wanted to clarify those few points that, you know, we absolutely do support the police here in Bolton, but I think we also have a duty and a right as elected representatives on this panel to raise these concerns that our residents bring us. Thank you.
Councillor Anderson.
Yeah, I want to welcome Steve for, you know, actually putting this issue on the agenda. I think it's something which, you know, obviously has been affected by the resources over a number of years. I certainly believe that a partnership approach is the most effective, and that's been demonstrated by some of the examples which members have illustrated. And we do need to try and get to a position where we make speeding, the use of mobile phones, as unacceptable as drink driving eventually. I mean, it's an aspiration which we all need to have. One thing that's never really clicked with me is why manufacturers of cars are allowed to produce vehicles which can go more than 70 miles an hour. You know, when the legal limit in this country is 70. So, you know, when you have people in excess of 100 miles an hour down some of our dual carriageways and highways in Greater Manchester, I'm sure there's something we're missing a trick there as well. Thank you.
Thanks for that, Kevin. Maybe when we get the self-driving cars, we can actually solve all these problems, but maybe that's a few years down the line. But Stephen, I'll let you do a final line on this one. Thanks.
Nigel, cheers, Chair. Thank you. Well, I've got to tell you guys, I weren't expecting any of that. When it came to Oldham Council, it was actually an opposition motion that came from the Lib Dems, and it virtually just went through our council without any discussion. And then somebody suggested, why don't Steve Williams take it to the Police and Crime Panel? And when I saw it, I thought, yeah, we'll have a bit of a chat about it. But I was amazed at what you guys have all said. Loads of different views, loads of different angles on it. The initial urgency, what the motion came along with, was if the police could just do a bit more. It wasn't slagging them off or anything like that. If they could just try and do a bit more. But I'll tell you what I'm going to do now. When this gets put online at our meeting, I'm going to cut and paste this a little bit, shove it on an email and send it back to the council and say, that's what we did at the Police and Crime Panel. We had a proper chat about it. And next time, as you said, Bev, we'll get ACC sightseeing and see what that guy has to say about it, because we could talk about this in all his own words. I'm looking at all the pictures of you all now. Each one of us has got stories to say about this. So thank you to everybody. Your contributions are excellent. Thank you.
Thanks for that. And I think it is certainly something we will put on our agenda for the future, because it's an update that is affecting most communities. But policing costs money, as we've seen over a number of years, and we've had different levels of precepts we were talking about. We'll be coming up with a precept next year, and we've got to work out where their priorities are. And the priorities for a number of years has been for neighbourhood policing. That's something we've been managing to certainly continue, which has been key to our areas, and that's where sometimes other things have had to slip because we can't have anything. We've got a finite resource, and it's looking at how we can actually get those priorities done that reflect the community needs and getting that balance right, which is very difficult with some of the budgets we've had. But no, very helpful discussion, very useful discussion, and I look forward to hearing more about it. And actually, part of this is sharing good practice as well, and I think there is some good practice that can be shared in different areas, and certainly Speedwatch that Councillor Freeman talked about in Trafford, we've done in certain areas in Manchester, and there's a demand for it. But that takes resource as well, of actually getting that right and getting that balance right, and getting the right people trained and people used to it, and having the right weight and level of enforcement behind it. But no, really, really helpful discussion, and thank members for that, and thank you to Oldham Council for forwarding it here and the discussion that's taking place. So well done. I'm going to move on then to item 8, and Jeanette, are you going to comment on this item? It's to do with complaints procedure, and it's in light of Carolyn, our lead chief exec, working on the NHS pandemic. So Jeanette, I'll let you comment on this one, please.
I'm actually deferring that to Gwyn. Gwyn, okay. The legal officers actually prepared the report, and there's two aspects of it. One is who looks after the complaints on behalf of the panel in the absence of Carolyn, but also a slight update that Gwyn will take you through in relation to your new responsibilities around fire.
Brilliant. Okay, Gwyn, over to you.
Thank you, Chair. as Jack said, just two matters to bring to you in relation to the panel's complaints procedure. First of all, you had a report back in July regarding the new fire amendment order, which brings within your remit fire and rescue functions for overview and scrutiny purposes. So what I've done is I've amended the complaints procedure. It's fairly simple amendments, naming the panel police, fire and crime panel throughout, and there's a reference in paragraph 1.1 to the fire functions of the mayor and the deputy mayor. And the second matter is that under the procedure, the lead chief executive has functions delegated to her by the panel in relation to complaints. Now, in her absence, undertaking the contained director role for NHS test and trace, we're asking you to temporarily delegate those functions to the chief executive for Salford City Council, Jim Taylor, so that we can deal with complaints in the interim. So there's the two matters for you to approve, the relatively minor amendments and to approve the delegation to Jim Taylor.
So quite a simple report on that one. Sorry, well, simple in the decision making, not necessarily the simplest report. Are members happy with that? I'm getting the thumbs and nods up all over the place. Yep. So we've only accepted. Thank you very much for that one. That is approved. And then moving on to item 9, which again is a report we've had distributed through, which is the decisions made by the deputy mayor. Do anyone want to comment on this to start off with?
Could I just say at the outset, Chair, just to say there's quite a lot of decisions there. I'm happy to answer any questions on them. If members raise something and I can't answer immediately, then we drop a note to members to explain exactly what any of those actions were about.
Thank you for that. And open that up to members. Any questions, comments at all on the decisions that have been made by the mayor from the beginning or mid-September through to the end of October?
Nigel, I've got one, please.
Yes, Stephen.
I've got one.
Yep, Steve, start off with.
Cheers, Nigel. Thank you. Bev, this is going to sound a bit of a silly question. I was reading through the paper this afternoon and looking at the different elements to what you've had to approve. What do you find challenging in doing that? I mean, there's some things that obviously you're not a bobby, you're not a police officer, so stay away, deputy mayor. You're not getting involved in that. There's going to be some of that, and there's lots of things that you will have to be involved in because by virtue of the fact you're the deputy mayor for policing and fire. So when it comes to decisions that you're making, where do you find the challenge where you're thinking, oh God, am I going to make a decision about that? What do I do?
You're on mute, Bev.
Would you like me to take that now?
Yeah, you might as well. How could we let that go without you coming straight in on that one?
Okay. There's different challenges. To be honest, you'll see from the outline there that the kind of type and the level of decision making is very, very varied. You know, some are in monetary terms quite minor. Some are very, very large decisions in terms of the financial implications. Some are very technical, and they're about the provision of technical equipment or technical in some other way. I've got a number of, I suppose, safety measures in that before the decision comes to me, it will go through the Assistant Chief Constable for Finance and Human Resources in the police. It then will also come through the GMCA Treasurer, Steve Wilson, who's been with us on the call today. He will have a look at it. My own Director of Police, Crime and Fire will look at it, and then it'll come to me. I do often raise questions about things. Quite often it'll be proposing a process to me and I'll raise questions about that if I'm not clear. I'm constantly asking questions about getting more social value from our procurement, which I think we're moving on and improving. But, you know, when we're spending large amounts of public money, I think we should, on contracts of various sorts, I think we should be able to get some other social value for our citizens in one way or another. So I think we're much more focused on that. I think that's the perspective that I've tried to strengthen. But, you know, basically I do have support behind me that helps me to answer any questions I've got. So I don't sign it unless I'm really absolutely clear and absolutely happy.
Thank you for that.
Thank you.
Councillor Lancaster.
It must be very difficult to actually deal with all these applications and so everybody can understand the comments. But the one I particularly wanted to raise was the one on page 7, dated the 29th of October. I've read it about 3 times and it doesn't make a lot of sense to me, but perhaps it does to others.
Is that the one at the top?
Yeah.
The capital expenditure on final business case. I think this follows on from the ones on, I think, on the bottom of page 6. And it's to do. It's to do with the information systems. I think the infrastructure services. I'll get you more detail about that. I agree with you. I mean, that description is quite opaque. What I would say that, you know, I will have had a kind of 6-page report on that, which I'll have gone through. So they've crunched it down to something that's, yeah, not very easy to read. But I'll get you chapter and verse on that, Councillor Lancaster.
Thanks very much.
It's a capital procurement, basically, but yeah, complicated.
Okay.
Can that go to all members, please?
Yeah, we'll get that distributed to all members. Yeah, that's not an issue. Any further comments on that one? No, thanks. And that, let me say, the decision, this paper that comes to us now is a regular feature of the Police and Crime and Fire panel, or now we've got the fire in it, and that's something new that we introduced in the last 12-18 months. I think it's quite useful because it is transparent and shows actually some of the key work that's actually going on and this investment in some services as well, which isn't always seen. So I think that is quite useful. As far as I can see, we're drawing to the end of today's meeting. We've agreed for a meeting certainly to go in mid-January. Is that the next meeting, Jeanette, or have we got one in December? I think it's the next meeting. We've got a steering group in December, haven't we?
That's correct, Councillor Murphy. We'll have a steering group in December, but the panel will meet again in January.
Okay, so thank you everyone for their time and their contribution. I think some good discussions there, some good updates as well. We'll see most people at the panel, but we don't. It will hopefully, 2021 can't be any worse than 2020, can it? Let's put it that way. But no, thanks everyone for attending, and see everybody at the panel in December. Sorry, at the steering group in December. But thanks for everyone's time. Thank you very much.
Nice to see everybody.
Thank you. Bye, everyone. Bye.